In the United States court system, we've got all these federal courts with all these federal judges, 860 of them at the moment to be exact, which is a lot. So how exactly do you get that job? Like, are there a bunch of people out there with resumes that say, proficient in Microsoft Excel, Photoshop, and really good at judging things? Not quite. Federal judgeships are a lifetime appointment. Once they get the job, they've got it for a long time, and that's why the process of picking a judge is so complicated. But don't worry, we're gonna take it step by step. Consider this your I'm just a bill for how a judge becomes like a different kind of judge. The TLDR version is that according to Article 2 of the Constitution, that's the one that talks about the powers of the executive branch, the president appoints federal judges with the advice and consent of the Senate. Senators make a short list of judges, the president picks one, the Senate says, yep, that person checks out, and boom, judge for life. But wait! Don't I vote for these people? Like, I definitely saw a bunch of judges on my ballot the last time I went to the polls. Where does that all fit in? Just like the federal government has an executive, legislative, and judicial branch, so does each state within it. So your state has a governor, a state legislature, and its own court system. The way your state judges get picked depends on where you live. In some states, they are appointed by the governor or selected by the state legislature, but in 39 states, judges are elected by you. We don't vote on federal judges, but lots of people who get picked to be federal judges start out as judges in their states, so that's a good reason not to skip that section of your ballot next time. Anyway, back to advice and consent. As soon as there's a vacant seat on the court, either because a judge retired or died, the Senate and the president need to start working together to fill it. The whole idea behind having a representative government is that the people who are in charge of our laws, institutions, and infrastructure are part of our communities, that they hear us and understand us and feel responsible to us. That's why we have members of Congress representing every state and district, and the same idea goes for federal judges. Usually, when there's a vacancy in the court, the president asks for recommendations from senators in the state or states that that court serves, so that judge has an understanding of the legal system in that community. Those home state senators come up with recommendations in a few different ways. In lots of states, they'll put together a federal nominating commission, which is basically a team of well-respected lawyers in that state who know what's up on the legal scene and can recommend good judicial candidates. A senator might also get some ideas from the local bar. Not that kind of bar, the professional association that licenses lawyers in each state. Once the home state senators have a short list of candidates, they'll share that with the president. That's the advice part. The White House will usually ask for information about the recommendations, like their education and employment history, opinions they've given in past cases if they've been a judge in a lower court, which organizations or political parties they've been involved in, and details about their finances to make sure they can make fair decisions. Basically, they want to make sure that nobody is gonna offer a judge special perks or money to say, hey, Your Honor, I really need you to rule in favor of Team Vegetable in this Our Tomatoes fruit case. You know, somebody out there's in the pocket of Big Vegetable. The White House takes all that information and then they do even more research. They try to figure out if the judge is qualified by interviewing the candidates, their supervisors, lawyers they've worked with, lawyers they've worked against, friends, colleagues, pretty much anybody who would know about their work in the legal profession. They even investigate the candidates' tax returns, criminal record, and medical history. I mean, once you appoint a judge, there's no going back, right? So it makes sense that if you want someone who is qualified, has integrity, and is who they say they are, you would ask everyone who might know about those things. You can't take it back if your brand new Supreme Court justice was exaggerating about being proficient in Excel. There's one more step before the president announces a nomination, but it happens outside the White House. The American Bar Association, that nonpartisan professional organization of lawyers we talked about before, will rate each of the candidates on their qualifications. Well-qualified ratings go to the candidates who have the best of the best reputations in their field and are seen by their peers as experts at interpreting the law in the most unbiased manner. A qualified rating means that the ABA thinks they're competent enough to do this very hard job, but in a normal way, not in like a hard eyes and 100 emojis way. A not qualified rating means that the people whose job it is to decide who is qualified to practice law say the candidate is not qualified to practice law at this important of a level. The president doesn't have to take a candidate's ABA rating into account, but it's a pretty bad look if they nominate someone that everyone else says is not qualified. Once the White House has a chance to review all of this advice, the president nominates one person for the role. Usually it's someone home state senators recommended, but not always. Then the Senate has to approve the president's nominee. That is the consent part. First, the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is the group of senators who lead the advice and consent process, sends a form to the senators in the states where the nominee would be serving to ask them their opinion of the nominee. The form is a slip of paper, and it's blue, so to make it easy on all of us, they call it a blue slip. This is where the senator can write about why they are in favor or against the candidate being appointed judge. If the president didn't take their advice on nominees or nominated someone who they think isn't qualified, they can delay the process or prevent a nominee from becoming a judge by writing a negative opinion on their blue slip or even failing to send their blue slip back to the Senate. But if the blue slips look good, the Senate Judiciary Committee holds a hearing to ask questions. It's kind of like any other job interview, except there are a couple dozen people there, and it might be aired on C-SPAN, and they can still send you written questions after the face-to-face part is over. Then that small committee of senators votes on whether the candidate should become a judge. They decide whether to bring the candidate to the full Senate for a vote, and if they do, whether they recommend that the Senate should consent or not consent to the nomination. The last step in the whole process is for the full Senate to vote on the nominee. This is another place the process can get slowed down because it's up to the Senate Majority Leader to schedule the vote. If the Majority Leader doesn't agree with the nomination, they can put voting off or just not schedule it at all, as we saw when Majority Leader Mitch McConnell declined to schedule a hearing on President Obama's Supreme Court nominee Merrick Garland, so he just never got rejected or confirmed. But when the Senate follows their normal process, they debate about whether or not to confirm the nominee until 2/3 of the Senate says they're ready to go to a vote. That 2/3 agreement to end the debating is called a cloture vote. Then the real vote happens, and if a majority of senators say, yes, this person should be a federal judge, the president officially appoints that person to serve on the court forever, or at least until they decide to retire or they die. We'll cover how you fit into this whole process soon, but next time we'll talk about what happens now. Once a judge is appointed to a federal court, what do they actually do there? They judge cases, duh, but figuring out the right way to decide them, that takes a whole new kind of judgment in itself.